The Technova Solutions meeting room was so quiet you could hear the sweat dripping from Richard Callahan's forehead. The regional manager, always so sure of himself with his Italian suit and his smile as if he had never lost anything in his life, was now shaking like a green stick, his eyes fixed on the woman sitting at the head of the table, the same woman he had brutally humiliated just 3 days earlier. Marina Patel adjusted her glasses and opened the red folder in front of her. 42 years old, plus-size body that she carried with absolute dignity, black hair tied into an impeccable bun. She hasn't said anything yet, just looked, and that look carried the weight of 15 years of swallowed humiliations, denied promotions and nasty comments whispered in the hallways. The CEO of the headquarters stood beside her, arms crossed, expression stony. The other managers present in the room looked like statues. Nobody moved. Nobody was breathing. "So, Richard," she said, her calm voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel, "let's talk about your management. Or rather, about how you turned this office into a private playground of discrimination." Richard tried to smile, that always rehearsed smile, but his lips trembled. "Marina, I think there was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" She tilted her head like a teacher evaluating a failing student. "Interesting that you used that word. Because last Monday when you told me in your office that I would never be promoted because of my appearance, your words were very clear. Crystal clear, in fact. 3 days earlier, everything had been different. It was Monday morning, 7:15 in the morning, when Marina arrived at the office carrying her battered backpack and the laptop she had bought herself because the company never provided a decent one. The parking lot was still empty. She always arrived early. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. 15 years working in the data analysis sector at Technova. 15 years of watching less qualified people rise while she stagnated in the same senior analyst position. People who barely knew how to differentiate an Excel spreadsheet from a Word document. People who made grotesque mistakes that she had to discreetly correct without taking credit. But Marina had a closely guarded secret. She wasn't just good at what she did. She was extraordinary. The type of professional who solves in 2 hours what would take the entire team a week. The kind that finds patterns where others only see numbers. The kind that predicts crises before they happen. But no one paid attention. Because Marina didn't fit the corporate mold of professional appearance. Because she didn't have a model's body. Because she wore simple clothes from popular stores while others sported expensive brands. Because she brought lunch from home while the group went to fancy restaurants. That morning she had barely sat down at her station when Richard's email pinged into her inbox. "I need to talk to you. Now. My office." Marina sighed. "I knew what it was. I had applied for the senior manager position the previous Friday, for the 4th time in 5 years, and for the 4th time, I knew what the answer would be." He crossed the still empty corridor. He knocked on the frosted glass door. She heard his board come in. Richard was leaning back in the ergonomic leather chair, scrolling through his cell phone. He didn't even look up when she entered. "Sit down, Marina," he said, still typing something. She sat in the uncomfortable chair facing his desk, waited. I knew the game. Richard loved making people wait. It was a cheap way to demonstrate power. 2 minutes of silence. He was still on his cell phone. Marina folded her hands in her lap and waited. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of looking anxious. Finally, Richard placed his cell phone on the table and looked at her. That evaluating look, from top to bottom, that she knew so well. The same look teachers gave her when she arrived in the classroom. The same look that salespeople gave in stores. The same look that said, "You don't belong here." "Look, I'm going to be straight with you," he said, drumming his fingers on the table. "I know you applied for the senior manager position." Again, Marina didn't respond. He just nodded. He kept his face neutral despite the anger boiling inside. "It won't happen. And before you ask why, let me spare you the corporate speech full of beats." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, a condescending smile on his lips. "You don't have the image we need to represent the company in meetings with clients. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Her heart sped up. His palms began to sweat, but the face remained impassive. 15 years of dealing with this had taught her the value of a good mask. "No, Richard, I don't understand. Can it be clearer?" He laughed. That short, arrogant laugh from anyone who thinks they are doing themselves a favor by being honest. "Marina, let's stop pretending, okay? You are competent. Great with numbers, no one denies that. Best analyst that has ever been here perhaps, but this vacancy requires presence. It requires someone who," he made a vague gesture with his hands as if searching for the right words, "makes a good impression. Clients expect to see someone who looks like what they imagine when they think of executive leadership, someone who has the right profile. You understand?" Marina understood perfectly, and every word was like a slap in the face. But she had learned long ago not to give people like Richard the satisfaction of seeing her break. "So you're saying I don't have the promotion because I'm fat," she said, voice firm, eyes fixed on his. "Hey, calm down." Richard raised his hands in false defense, feigning scandal. "I never used that word. Don't put words in my mouth. I'm just being realistic about market expectations. This is business, Marina. Image matters. First impression matters. And frankly, you will never get promoted until you understand this basic reality. That's how the world works. It's not me, it's the market." He crossed his arms, satisfied with his own speech, as if he was giving her a life lesson. Marina was silent for 5 seconds that seemed eternal. She studied his face, the eyebrow slightly raised, the barely disguised smile of superiority, the relaxed posture of someone who has never been judged by their appearance in life. "I understand," she said finally, standing up calmly. "Can I go?" "Of course. And look, don't take it to people, okay? It's just how things work in the corporate world. If you want to talk about professional development, my door is always open. Who knows? A gym, some image classes. It could help with your career, you know?" Marina didn't respond. He turned on his heel and left that room with his nails digging into his palms, leaving half-moon marks on his skin. He passed through the hallway where 3 colleagues, Jennifer, Marcus, and the new intern, quickly looked away. They had heard everything. Richard's door never closed properly, and he never cared. In fact, Marina suspected that he liked others to hear his frank conversations. She walked to her workstation in the corner of the room, away from the windows, away from everyone, the place where they always put people they wanted to hide. He sat on the old chair that creaked, turned on the computer, waited for the programs to load, and then, with perfectly steady fingers, he opened the email and typed a message of just 2 lines to an address that no one there knew. No one noticed that Marina smiled as she clicked send. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but one that carried 15 years of strategic patience, finally coming to an end. Because what Richard Callahan didn't know, what no one in that entire office knew, was that Marina Patel wasn't just an exceptional data analyst. She had another resume, another name in another place, another life that she had kept carefully separate all those years for very specific reasons. And over the next 3 days, that entire office was going to find out exactly who Marina Patel really was. Tuesday passed in slow motion. Marina worked normally, corrected the usual errors, saved 2 projects that were falling apart, had lunch alone. Richard passed her 3 times and didn't even look in her direction. Like always, Wednesday morning started differently. Marina arrived at 7, as always. But this time, there was a strange movement in the parking lot. 2 black cars with out-of-state license plates. Dear ones, very expensive. When he entered the office, the receptionist was nervous, answering the phone and trying to organize papers at the same time. "Marina," she whispered hurriedly, "there are people from the headquarters here. The CEO came in person. Nobody knew he was coming." Marina just nodded and headed to her station, but he didn't sit down. He stood, rearranging some documents, observing. Richard appeared running 10 minutes later, tie askew, hair still wet from his hasty shower. He had been called in hastily. He was visibly nervous, but trying to hide it with his practiced corporate smile. That's when the main door opened. 4 executives entered, impeccable suits, the attitude of someone who decides the fate of hundreds of employees before breakfast, and in their midst, talking naturally to the CEO as if they were old acquaintances, was Marina. But not Marina with a worn backpack and simple clothes. Marina with a red leather briefcase under her arm. Marina walking with the authority of someone who has always belonged to that space. Marina smiling at the CEO as an equal. Richard froze in the middle of the hallway, mouth half open, eyes wide. Jennifer dropped her coffee cup. The noise, the sound of breaking porcelain echoed in the sudden silence. "Guys, can I have your attention?" the CEO announced, his deep voice filling the main room. "I would like to officially introduce Marina Patel, our new Regional Director of Operations. She will assume duties immediately, and her first official act will be to conduct a complete and detailed audit of this unit. Marina has complete autonomy to implement the changes she deems necessary." Richard's world came crashing down in slow motion. He saw Marina walk past him without looking. He saw her enter the main meeting room. He saw her sit at the head of the table. He saw her open that red folder. "Richard Callahan," the CEO called. "Come in, please. We have a lot to discuss." And now he was there, sitting in that uncomfortable chair, feeling what Marina had felt for 15 years. The difference is that Marina had never deserved that treatment. He deserved every second of what was to come. Marina leafed through some documents. There was no rush. He let the silence do its work. He saw Richard shift in his chair. She saw sweat appear on his forehead. He saw reality falling on him like an avalanche. "Let's start with your human resources management, Richard," she said finally. her voice professional without emotion. I have here documentation of 17 formal complaints of discrimination registered in the last 4 years. 14 were filed by you personally without proper investigation. They were all against you. Do you want to start by explaining this one? She turned a document towards him, dated May 19, 2023, when you told Julia Mendez in front of the entire team that she was too old to understand new technology and should consider early retirement. Julia was 47 at the time, Richard, 8 years younger than the CEO sitting here next to me. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat had become a desert. No? Would you rather talk about this one then? Marina took another piece of paper. August 17th. Marcus Webb. You publicly questioned whether a black man had really graduated from Stanford or whether he had gotten in through a quota system. Marcus showed you the diploma. You laughed and said that paper will take anything. The CEO made a sound of disapproval. Richard turned purple. Or maybe you'd prefer to start with the most recent one. Marina picked up the last document. The movement was calm, surgical. Monday, 4 days ago, when you told me, and I quote, "You will never be promoted until you understand that image matters and you don't have the right image." Richard tried to speak. The voice came out like a squeal. That was a misunderstanding. You meant exactly what you said. Marina interrupted. 3 people heard it. They all gave testimony. It's all here. She tapped the red folder. If you're enjoying this story of justice being done, don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the revenge is just beginning and you won't want to miss what's ahead. Marina had waited 15 years for that moment. 15 years planning. 15 years building something Richard never imagined. 15 years of collecting evidence, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment. And now, seeing the man who tried to destroy her dignity crumbling in front of her, Marina realized something. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about justice. And justice, when executed well, was a work of art. She looked at Richard once more. He was destroyed, but the real storm hadn't even started yet, because in that red folder there were much more than 15 complaints. There was the complete truth about who Marina Patel really was. And when that truth was revealed, everyone would understand that underestimating someone based on their appearance is not just cruel, it's strategic stupidity. Richard tried to regain his composure. He cleared his throat. He adjusted his tie, that nervous tick he always did when he lost control of the situation. Marina, with all due respect, I think you're misinterpreting some informal conversations, he said, forcing a professional smile. I've always valued your technical work. You know that. Technical work, Marina repeated, letting the words hang in the air. Interesting that you use that term, Richard, as if analyzing data that saved this company from 3 financial collapses was just technical work. The CEO leaned forward, interested. 3 breakdowns? Explain this better, Marina. She opened another section of the red folder. Richard turned even paler, if that was possible. March 2021, Marina began, voice firm. This unit was about to lose its contract with Harrison Industries, $14 million. Richard had presented a completely flawed market analysis that suggested raising prices by 23%. I redid the entire analysis. If over a weekend I identified his mistakes and presented a counteroffer that maintained the contract. Richard signed below and took credit. Isn't that true, Richard? Silence. September of 2022, she continued. The demand forecasting system Richard implemented was throwing away $38,000 a month in dead stock. $38,000 for 7 months. I identified the problem, created a new predictive model, and implemented it alone, working late nights. Richard presented it as his initiative at the quarterly meeting, received performance bonus. I received a thank you via email. The CEO took notes. The pen scratched the paper hard. And the third? He asked. Marina smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. That's my favorite. December of last year. Richard approved a database merger without consulting anyone. Any junior analyst would have seen the problem. The systems were incompatible. When they ran the integration, they corrupted 4 years of customer data. Total panic. The company was hours away from losing safety certifications and facing federal lawsuits and fines. Richard was hiding in his living room pretending he was crisis management while taking calls from the real estate agent about the new house he had purchased. That's an absurd lie, Richard finally exploded. I was coordinating teams. You were panicking, Marina corrected calmly. I spent 52 straight hours manually reconstructing the data. 52 hours, Richard. Jennifer brought me coffee. Marcus brought me food. I slept for 3 hours on the floor of the server room because I couldn't leave there. I saved the data. I saved the certifications. I saved the contracts. I saved your career. And do you know what you did the following Monday? Richard didn't respond. You called me into your office, Marina continued, and for the first time there was genuine emotion in her voice. and you said that I looked unkempt and that I needed to groom myself better because I had bags under my eyes and my hair was messy. The scholarships were from spending 2 sleepless nights saving the work you destroyed, Richard. The hair was messy because I was literally sleeping on the floor of a server room while you slept peacefully in your king-size bed. The silence in the room was thick as concrete. The CEO closed his notebook. The noise echoed like a judge's gavel. Continue, Marina. I want to hear everything. And she continued. Because I had 15 years of story to tell. Marina explained how Richard systematically stole credit from competent employees while only promoting people who praised him and never questioned his disastrous decisions. He explained how he created a culture of fear where no one dared disagree with him. He explained how he used performance reviews as a tool for personal revenge against those who did not bow to his authority. Jennifer Reeves's case is exemplary, Marina said, picking up another document. Jennifer is a data scientist with a PhD from Princeton, 10 years of experience, published 3 papers in scientific journals on machine learning. Richard hired her personally 2 years ago. At the first team meeting, Jennifer politely pointed out a statistical error in his presentation, a basic mistake from the first semester of college. Richard smiled, said thanks for the contribution, and the following week began to sabotage her work. Sabotage is a serious accusation, the CEO said. I have proof, Marina replied. Emails from him instructing the team to review Jennifer's work, creating extra bureaucratic steps just for her, excluding her from important meetings, removing her name from reports she wrote. Everything documented. Jennifer applied for internal transfer 3 times. It was denied. He resigned last month. We lost one of the most brilliant minds in this company because Richard couldn't stand a woman smarter than him pointing out his mistakes. Richard was purple now. The veins in the neck stood out. This is conspiracy. You are distorting everything. These people are incompetent, and you are defending mediocrity. Incompetent? Marina raised an eyebrow. Jennifer has a PhD from Princeton. Marcus has an MBA from Columbia and has 15 professional certifications. David Lee is a software engineer with 20 years of experience on 3 continents. I have a double degree and 15 years of proven results, but we are incompetent. Interesting. Do you know what we all have in common, Richard? She paused. He let the question float. None of us look like you. The sentence fell like a bomb. Richard was livid. He opened his mouth to protest, but the CEO raised his hand, silencing him. Before you say anything, Richard, I need to inform you that this audit did not start on Monday, the CEO said, voice cold as ice. With started 6 months ago. Marina isn't just your new boss. She is a senior consultant for inclusion and operational efficiency at the headquarters. Your work over the past 8 years has been to identify toxic managers in our branches, document patterns of discrimination, and recommend corrective actions. She applied to work here voluntarily, specifically in this unit, specifically under your management. And you spent 15 years collecting evidence while doing the work you were supposed to be doing. Richard looked like he had been punched in the stomach. Marina watched the information sink in. He saw the exact moment he understood. She saw the horrible realization spreading across his face like an ink blot. Were you investigating me this whole time? He whispered. Not just you, Marina corrected. I was documenting a toxic corporate culture. You were just her greatest example. But yes, Richard, every conversation, every email, every nasty comment, every denied promotion, every stolen credit, every humiliation, I documented everything, because I knew that one day people like you would have to answer for this. She closed the red folder. Do you know what your biggest mistake was, Richard? It wasn't underestimating me for 15 years. That's what I expected. People like you always underestimate people like me. His biggest mistake was doing it on Monday. It was looking at me and saying that I would never be promoted. Because up until that moment I was still unsure whether I should really accept the promotion to regional director. It was a difficult decision. It meant moving, changing my life, taking on enormous responsibilities. Marina leaned forward, eyes fixed on his. But when you said those words, Richard, when you made it clear that it didn't matter how much I worked, how much I dedicated myself, how much value I brought to this company, none of that would matter because I didn't have the right image. In that moment, you left me no choice, because I realized that if I didn't accept this position, you would keep doing it, with other people, with other Marinas, with others Jennifer, Marcus, David, and I couldn't let that happen. The CEO nodded in approval. Marina officially took over yesterday. He spent the last 72 hours reviewing the entire operation of this unit. The numbers are devastating, Richard. Under his management, this branch has the worst talent retention rate in the company, 42% turnover. The corporate average is 16. You are losing the best professionals and keeping only the mediocre ones who cannot find a job elsewhere. That's not fair, Richard protested. The market is competitive. Everyone is losing employees. All other units have improved retention in the last 2 years, Marina said, pushing a graph towards him. All except this one. And do you know why people leave? I conducted exit interviews with 38 former employees. Guess which name appeared in 35 testimonials as the main reason for leaving the company? Richard didn't need to guess. Marina continued, relentless. His predecessor, Thomas Chen, considered this unit the most productive in the region. When he was promoted and you took over 6 years ago, productivity dropped 19% in the first year, 23% in the second. The numbers only stabilized because I and other competent people worked twice as hard to compensate for their managerial incompetence. Numbers can be manipulated, Richard shouted, desperate. You're manipulating data to incriminate me. The data doesn't lie, Richard, Marina said calmly, and I don't need to manipulate it. They speak for themselves. Want to see more? Customer satisfaction fell from 92 to 74%. Profit margin, stagnant while other units grew. Innovation, 0 patents, 0 new products, 0 successful initiatives in 6 years. Your management is a creative desert kept alive only by the competence of the people you actively try to destroy. The CEO stood up. Richard Callahan, you are suspended immediately, effective immediately, while we conduct a formal investigation into the charges filed. Hand over your badge, your keys, and your access to the system. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 15 minutes. You can't do that. Richard stood up, chair falling back. I'm going to sue. I have lawyers. You will regret it. You can try, the CEO said without emotion. But know that we have 8 years of documentation, dozens of witnesses and evidence that would make any lawyer advise you to accept a settlement. And frankly, Richard, after hearing what I heard today, I am personally ensuring that you never again work in a leadership position at any company where I have influence. And trust me, I have a lot of influence in this industry. 2 security guards entered the room. Richard looked at Marina, waiting. What? Pity? Hesitation? He found nothing of the sort. Just the same calm, professional expression she always had. The same expression he'd seen for 15 years and never really noticed because he was too busy judging her appearance to see the person behind it. Marina, he tried, voice breaking. You don't need to do that. We can talk. We can solve this another way. She didn't respond. He just watched as the security guards escorted him out. When the door closed, the CEO turned to her. Officially welcome, Director Patel. I know it was difficult. I know these 15 years were, he paused, searching for words. Necessary, Marina added. They were necessary, because now I'm not just indignant. I have evidence. I have jurisprudence. I have a full case study on how structural discrimination destroys companies from within, and I will use this to ensure that no other Richard Callahan does this to any other person in this company. The CEO smiled. It wasn't a corporate smile. It was genuine. That's why I wanted you in this position. Not despite what you've been through, but because of it. Because you understand firsthand what needs to change. And you have the competence to change. Marina nodded. Then, for the first time in 15 years of working at that company, she relaxed. But just for a moment, because outside, in the main office, 50 employees were waiting. Some with hope, some scared, some with doubt. And Marina needed to show them all that what had happened there was not personal revenge. It was systemic justice. And it was just the beginning. Through the glass, she saw Jennifer looking into the meeting room. The woman's eyes were teary. Marina waved, inviting her to come in. There was a lot of work ahead, many wounds to heal, lots of people to rebuild, lots of toxic culture to dismantle. But for the first time in 15 years, Marina Patel had the power to do so, and she wasn't going to waste this opportunity. What no one yet knew was that Richard's fall was just the first domino. There were others, many others, and they were all about to fall. Jennifer entered the meeting room with hesitant steps. The eyes were still red, but there was something different about them now, a spark that didn't exist yesterday. Sit here, Jennifer, Marina said, pointing to the chair next to her. We need to talk. Jennifer sat up, hands shaking slightly. Marina pushed a fresh cup of coffee towards her. You applied for an internal transfer 3 times, Marina said bluntly. Richard blocked them all. You resigned 2 weeks ago. They haven't processed his departure yet. Do you know why? Jennifer shook her head, confused. Because I blocked it, Marina replied. When I took over as director yesterday, the first thing I did was freeze all pending layoffs from this unit. You're not going anywhere, Jennifer, not like this, not letting Richard win. Marina, I can't take it anymore, Jennifer whispered. 2 years of being sabotaged. 2 years of having my work questioned, revised, discredited. I have a PhD. I have published papers. I know exactly who you are. Marina interrupted, gentle but firm, and I know exactly what he did to you, with all of you, and now let's fix this. But I need you to trust me. I need you to stay. Can I count on you? Jennifer looked at Marina, really looked. He saw the woman who spent 15 years being invisible, being underestimated, being trampled on, and he also saw the strength that this built. Yes, Jennifer said, voice firmer. You can count on me. Excellent, because you're going to help me rebuild this unit from scratch. And let's start today. Over the next few hours, Marina did something that no one expected. She called for individual meetings, not with managers, not with the coordinators, with invisible people, the people Richard never looked in the eye. Marcus Webb was second, systems analyst, 34, black man who had heard Richard question his Stanford degree more times than he could count. Marcus, Marina said when he entered, I saw your process automation project, the one you submitted 8 months ago. Marcus blinked in surprise. Richard said it was unfeasible, which would be very expensive to implement. Richard lied. Marina opened the laptop. I sent the project to 3 senior engineers at headquarters. They all said the same thing. Brilliant, innovative, would save approximately $200,000 a year in manual labor. Do you know why Richard rejected it? Marcus shook his head. Because he didn't understand. And people like Richard would rather kill ideas they don't understand than admit that someone is smarter than them. Your project will be implemented. You will lead the team, wow, and you will get all the credit. Are you in? Marcus was silent for 3 seconds. Then he smiled. First time I actually smiled in months. I'm in. One by one, Marina rebuilt the trust that Richard had systematically destroyed. David Lee, a software engineer who had been demoted because he questioned too much. Sarah Martinez, designer who regularly had her ideas stolen. Kevin Zhao, who had been ridiculed for having an accent. Priya Singh, who was told she didn't look American enough to deal with customers. Each conversation was a piece being replaced on the board. Each person was a soldier being recruited into a war they barely realized they were fighting. But not everything was reconstruction. There was also necessary demolition. On Wednesday afternoon, Marina called a meeting with the 3 middle managers who reported directly to Richard: Brad Sullivan, Kyle Morrison, and Amanda Chen, the trio who had learned management from Richard and replicated his methods. Gentlemen, madam, Marina began, without warming up, you have a very simple choice ahead of you. They can continue managing the way they learned from Richard Callahan, or they can learn a new way of leading, but they can't do both, and they need to decide now. Brad, the most arrogant of the 3, crossed his arms. With all due respect, Director, our numbers are solid. Our team delivers results. Your team delivers results despite you, not because of you, Marina corrected. I know exactly how you manage. You inherited Richard's style: intimidation, micromanagement, credit stealing, and favoritism based on personal loyalty rather than competence. And that ends today. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Marina, I always tried to be fair. You rejected 3 of Priya Singh's promotion requests using exactly the same words Richard used. No executive presence, Marina said, pushing documents across the table. Priya has an MBA, speaks 4 languages, and brought 2 of the biggest clients to this unit, but it doesn't have executive presence. Explain this to me. Embarrassed silence. Can't you? I'll explain then. Priya wears sari to office sometimes, maintains its cultural traditions, and it bothers you because it doesn't fit with the corporate American image that Richard has cultivated here. But guess what? This narrow corporate image is killing this company, and it will change, starting now. Marina placed 3 folders on the table, 1 for each manager. Inside these folders are leadership development plans. You have 90 days to demonstrate real change, 90 days to prove that they can lead with inclusion, respect, and merit. I will monitor it personally. Conversations with your teams, decision reviews, promotion audits. If I see a single Richard-style pattern, you guys leave. No second chance. Is it clear? Brad looked like he was about to explode, but Kyle put his hand on his arm. That's clear, Kyle said. And honestly, thank you. I knew something was wrong here, but I didn't know how to change it without losing my job. Amanda nodded, taking the folder. Me too. I'm going to read this today. Brad took the folder grudgingly, but he did. When they left, the CEO, who had been watching everything silently from the corner of the room, whistled softly. You don't waste time. I can't, Marina said. Every day I spend being too kind is another day that competent people suffer. I've already lost 15 years. I won't lose any more. And Richard? What do you think he's doing now? Marina smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Exactly what I expected him to do. Richard Callahan was doing exactly 3 things simultaneously: panicking, calling lawyers, and posting on LinkedIn. Sitting in the apartment he could barely afford, with a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table, he typed furiously on his laptop. Sometimes companies make hasty decisions based on unfounded accusations. When strong leaders challenge the status quo, they are not always understood, but the truth always prevails. I am confident that this situation will be resolved, and my reputation will be restored. I appreciate everyone's messages of support. He paused, reread, posted. 15 seconds later, the first comment appeared. It wasn't supportive. Richard, I worked with you for 3 years. You're the most toxic person I've ever met in a corporate environment. I'm glad someone finally had the courage to confront you. He deleted the comment. Another appeared. Everyone who has worked with you knows exactly why you were suspended. It's surprising that it took so long. Delete. Another comment. I remember when you said that women shouldn't be engineers because they don't think logically. In front of the whole team. You deserve everything that's happening. Richard closed the laptop, hands shaking. He picked up the glass of whiskey. He drank it all at once. The phone rang. Attorney. Richard, I finished reviewing the documentation the company sent. The lawyer's voice was professional, but there was something about it. Resignation. We need to talk. Personally. Today. Is it bad? Long pause. It's devastating. They have everything, Richard. Emails, recordings of meetings, testimonies from dozens of witnesses, internal documents. If this ends up in court, you don't have a chance. None. My advice is to accept the severance agreement and move on. Agreement? I didn't do anything wrong. Richard, you told a plus-size employee that she would never be promoted because of her appearance. You have 3 people who witnessed this. You told a black employee who questioned whether his degree was real. The lawyer sighed. I have 23 pages of incidents here. 23, Richard. And that's just the summary. If you fight it, they will expose everything. Your career is over. Completely. Accept the deal. Sign confidentiality. Get the 6-month severance pay and start over in another industry. Richard hung up the phone. He didn't respond. It just hung up. Because he was beginning to understand something terrible. He had lost. Completely. And the woman he spent 15 years ignoring had orchestrated his downfall with surgical precision. While Richard was drowning in whiskey and self-pity, Marina was at the office until 2 in the morning on Thursday, working. But I wasn't alone. Jennifer was there reviewing code. Marcus was testing his automation project. David was redesigning systems. Sarah was creating new branded materials. Priya was planning customer strategies. All voluntarily. All because for the first time in years someone had seen value in them. Someone had given them a voice. Someone had fought for them. Marina, Jennifer said, bringing more coffee. Can I ask something? Of course. Why did you stay? 15 years of being treated like that. Why didn't you leave sooner? Marina stopped typing. He looked at the screen for a moment. Then he swiveled his chair around to face Jennifer. Because if I had left, Richard would have won. And worse, he would have continued doing this to other people. I stayed because someone needed to document it. Someone needed to have proof. Someone had to be willing to hold out until they had enough ammunition to not just get out, but change the entire system. She paused. And because I knew that one day, when I had enough power, I could make sure no other Richard did this to anyone else. Was it worth it? I don't know. 15 years is a long time. But if it means you and Marcus and everyone else can work without fear, then yes, it was worth every horrible second. Jennifer had tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Marina said, returning to the screen. We still have a lot of work. Because Richard was just a symptom, the problem is bigger, and we will fix everything. On Friday morning, Marina called a general meeting. All 53 employees of the unit, no exceptions. They came in nervous. Some expected mass layoffs. Others expected empty corporate speak. Nobody expected what really happened. Marina stood in front of everyone. No PowerPoint presentation, no notes, just her and her words. I know you're scared, she began. Change in leadership is always scary, but I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. No one here is being fired because of who you are. No one here will lose their job because of appearance, age, gender, race, sexual orientation, accent, religion, or any other personal characteristic. Zero tolerance. If anyone tries to do this, please come to me directly. I will handle it personally. People started to relax. Slightly. But, Marina continued, some things will change. Radically. Let's implement blind performance reviews. We will create a promotions committee with diverse representation. We will review all salaries and correct unwarranted discrepancies. We will train all managers in inclusive leadership, and we will create an anonymous reporting channel that goes directly to headquarters, not to local leadership. She paused. He let the words sink in. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to make sure you all get a fair chance to show what you're capable of, and in return I expect excellence. I expect hard work. I expect integrity, but I will never, ever again accept that anyone in this unit be judged by anything other than their skills and results. That era is over. Understood? 53 heads nodded. Excellent. Now get back to work. We have a unit to rebuild. When everyone left, Marcus approached. Marina, can I talk to you? Of course. I researched you last night, he said, voice low. Enka, I found your articles, his lectures, your work with inclusion consultancy. You're kind of legendary in this area. Why didn't you ever tell us? Marina smiled. Because if I had told you, Richard would have fired me immediately. Or worse, he would have changed his behavior in front of me and continued being toxic when I wasn't looking. I needed him to show exactly who he was. No filters, no masks. And for that, I needed to be invisible, until the moment is right. And is this the right time? This, Marina said, looking around the office that was finally starting to breathe again, is exactly the right time. What no one yet knew was that while Marina was rebuilding the unit inside, something was happening outside. Richard had made calls. I had activated contacts. He had spread his version of the story in groups of executives, at networking dinners, in private conversations. And some people had believed, some influential people, some people with power. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just warming up, and Marina was going to need every ally, every test, every ounce of strength she had accumulated over the last 15 years. Because Richard Callahan, even suspended, even defeated, was not the type of man who accepted losing in silence, and his revenge was being carefully planned at that very moment. Monday, 7 in the morning. 2 weeks after Richard's suspension, Marina was in the meeting room when her phone vibrated. Message from the head office's legal department. We need to talk. Urgent. Richard is suing the company. Allegation. Dismissal for retaliation and defamation. She didn't seem surprised. Just tired. He really did it, she muttered to herself. Jennifer, who was reviewing reports on the other side of the table, raised her head. Did what? Richard. He's suing us. He says he was persecuted and defamed. But can he win? Marina shook her head slowly, a tiny smile on her lips. Not if I have anything to say about it. What Jennifer didn't know, what no one except the CEO knew, was that Marina had been waiting for this exact move, planning for it, preparing the final move that would turn Richard's desperate attempt into his own professional death sentence. On Tuesday morning, Richard confidently arrived at the office of his lawyer, Douglas Porter, an expensive man in an impeccable suit known for destroying cases of corporate discrimination. Richard had sold his imported car to pay the initial fees, but it was worth it. Porter never lost. Richard, before we begin, Porter said, fingers intertwined on the table, I need you to be completely honest with me. Something you didn't tell me? Any compromising email? Any recordings? Nothing, Richard replied confidently. They are fabricating accusations. Marina Patel has a personal vendetta against me because I rejected her for promotion. It's that simple. Resentful woman with new power. Porter took notes. Right. Let's go with reverse bullying, hostile work environment created against you, and defamation by the company by sharing false information about its management. We're going to ask for $5 million in damages. Richard smiled. First time I've actually smiled in 2 weeks. When do we start? Protocol today. They have 30 days to respond. What Richard didn't know was that at that exact moment, Marina was in a video conference with the head office's legal department and 3 lawyers specializing in labor law. He sued, Marina said without emotion. Exactly as I predicted. You seem too calm, commented Sarah Chen, chief lawyer. He's asking for $5 million and claiming you fabricated evidence. I know. Marina opened her laptop. That's why I spent the weekend preparing something. Can I share screen? She shared. What appeared made the 3 lawyers lean forward simultaneously. That's, Sarah began. A complete dossier, Marina completed. 473 pages. 8 years of investigation. Not just about Richard, but about the entire network of executives who share the same behaviors. Richard is part of a networking group called Executive Leaders Forum. 15 men, all managers or directors in technology companies, all with similar patterns of discrimination. She clicked, opening a section. They have a private group on the Signal app. They thought it was safe. It is not. A remorseful member gave me all his backup 6 months ago. 3,000 messages. Want to see some? Marina started reading. Richard Callahan. I hired a new woman today. Good looking. Incompetent. But at least she improves her eyes. I'll put her at the front desk. Brad Murphy. Lowell. At least it's good for something. Here I'm having to put up with a fat woman who only knows how to complain. She said she won't be promoted. I should be grateful to have a job. Richard Callahan. Bro, I have one like that too. Marina. Good with numbers, but it looks like she ate all the reports, ha 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 ha. Customers see her and think the company is bankrupt. Silence on the call. Marina continued, relentless. There's more, much more. Conversations about how to filter diverse candidates in selection processes. Strategies to block promotions without leaving a trace. jokes about employees with disabilities, racist comments about customers. It's all here. Marina, Sarah said, voice controlled but shocked. This destroys not only Richard, this destroys 15 careers, potentially affects 8 different companies. I know, Marina said, and I have certified copies, verified by a digital forensic expert. I have timestamps, metadata, everything. Inadmissible in court? Perhaps. But inadmissible in the court of public opinion? Absolutely usable. The older lawyer, James Morrison, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. You're suggesting strategic leakage. I'm suggesting that if Richard wants to play dirty, we have ammunition he doesn't even know exists, Marina corrected. But let's not leak anything. Yet. First, let's use this as leverage in negotiation. Let's show his lawyer exactly what we have. Let's give Richard one last chance to back off and sign a confidentiality agreement. If he refuses, then we leaked, Sarah added, a smile appearing, and we didn't just destroy his case. We destroyed any chance of him working again. Exactly. On Thursday, Douglas Porter received a large envelope via express mail. Inside, a formal letter and a flash drive. The letter was short. Mr. Porter, inside this flash drive are samples of evidence that will be presented if Mr. A. Callahan's lawsuit proceeds. We strongly suggest that you review the material before proceeding. The firm is willing to negotiate a confidential settlement that benefits its client, but only if he withdraws the lawsuit within the next 72 hours. After that time, all material will be made public. Porter plugged in the flash drive with slightly shaking hands, opened the folder. He started reading. 5 minutes later, he was sweating. 10 minutes later, he was pale. 15 minutes later, he picked up the phone and called Richard. We need to talk. Now. My office. Bring your passport and credit cards because you'll want to disappear after this conversation. Richard arrived an hour later, still confident. Relax, Douglas. I know they'll try to intimidate us, but sit down, Porter interrupted, voice hard, and read this. He turned the monitor toward Richard. The first message from the signal group appeared on the screen. Richard read it. The face gradually lost color like paint being washed off. This is private, like them. It doesn't matter how they got it, Porter said. It matters what they have, and there's more, much more. Pages and pages, Richard. You and your cronies in the scumbag executive club have enough messages here to destroy not just you, but 15 careers and 8 different companies. But that's illegal, cannot be used in court. It doesn't need to be used in court. Porter leaned forward. They'll leak it to the press, for social networks, for your future employers, for your family. You're going to make headlines, Richard. Executive sued company for discrimination while having secret group where he mocked fat, black, female, and disabled employees. How do you think this will end for you? Richard couldn't speak. He just stared at the screen, seeing years of private pranks exposed for what they really were, systematic evidence of deliberate discrimination. They're offering a settlement, Porter continued. You withdraw the lawsuit, sign mutual confidentiality, receive 6 months of compensation, neutral letter of recommendation, and they don't publish any of it. You have 72 hours. What if I don't accept? Porter laughed. It wasn't a gentle laugh. So you don't just lose the process, you lose everything. Your reputation, your connections, any chance of working in a leadership position again. You become a case study in corporate ethics classes on what not to do. You become an internet meme. You become Richard Callahan, the idiot who sued the company for discrimination while discriminating against everyone else. Is this what you want? Dead silence. I need to think. You have 72 hours, Porter repeated. But if you want my advice, sign. Sign today. Sign now. And thank the heavens that Marina Patel is being merciful enough to give you that option. Richard stumbled out of the office, got in the car. He sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine, hands shaking on the steering wheel. He took out his cell phone, opened the signal group, the same group where there was spent years making jokes, mocking, ridiculing, the same group that was now his death sentence. He typed a message. Guys, we have a problem, a huge problem. 11 responses arrived within 3 minutes. Everyone panicking. Because Marina hadn't just destroyed Richard, she had exposed the entire network. On Friday afternoon, Douglas Porter personally delivered the signed documents to Technova's legal office. Richard had withdrawn the suit, signed confidentiality, 6 months of compensation accepted. Sarah Chen carefully reviewed each page. Then he waved to Marina, who was waiting in the next room. It's done, Sarah said. He signed everything. The process is over. Marina nodded. There was no triumph on her face, just tiredness. And the others? The other 14 in the group? 3 have already been fired from their respective companies, Sarah replied, consulting notes. 5 are being investigated internally. The other 6, well, let's say their companies are reassessing cultural fit. None will survive. You didn't just destroy Richard, you have cleared the entire network. Marina was silent for a moment. You know what's funny? she said finally. Richard was right about one thing. Image matters, but not in the way he thought. It's not about body or color or gender, it's about character. And his character was rotten. It only took 15 years for everyone to see what I saw from day one. The following Monday, Marina called a general meeting again. The whole office gathered. I want everyone to know that the lawsuit that Richard Callahan filed against the company has been dropped, she announced. He has signed a settlement and will no longer work in this industry. But more important than that, the investigation that began here has expanded. We identified an entire network of executives engaged in systematic discrimination. 15 people in total. They are all being held responsible. Applause began. Shy at first, then stronger and stronger. Marina raised her hand, asking for silence. But I don't want applause. I want you to understand something. This was not revenge. It was justice. And justice is not about destroying people. It's about creating systems where this type of behavior can no longer exist. So yes, Richard and his friends fell, but our real work is just beginning. We need to build something better, something where no one has to spend 15 years collecting evidence because they're afraid of not being believed. The silence was now respectful. Pay attention. We are implementing new policies in all 23 units of the company, Marina continued. Blind assessments, various committees, regular audits, reporting channeled directly to head office, and mandatory training for every leader. This is just the beginning, but it's a real start. After the meeting, Marcus approached. Marina, can I talk to you for a second? They went to the empty meeting room. Marcus looked nervous. I have friends at other tech companies, he began. Companies where some of those 15 guys worked. The news is spreading. People are sharing their own stories. Employees who suffered and never reported it are finally speaking out. You started something bigger than just Richard. Marina sat up, suddenly looking vulnerable for the first time in weeks. I know, and it scares me, because now I have responsibility not just here but everywhere. People are looking, waiting. What if I fail? You won't fail, Marcus said firmly, because you're not like Richard. You're not doing this out of ego. You are doing it because it is right. Marina smiled, tired, but genuine. Thank you, Marcus. I needed to hear this. That night, alone in the empty office, Marina finally allowed the mask to fall. 15 years of pain, 15 years of humiliation, 15 years of forced smiles and forcibly maintained dignity finally spilled over into silent tears. She cried for the Marina of 15 years ago, who believed that competence would be enough, for Marina who came home every day feeling invisible, for Marina who heard nasty comments and pretended not to hear, for Marina who saw less qualified people rising while she remained stagnant. But he also cried with relief, because finally, it was over. The war had ended, justice had been done, and when she stopped crying, Marina Patel got up, washed her face, adjusted her glasses, and went back to work. Because justice was not a destination, it was a journey, and she still had a long way to go. Richard Callahan, meanwhile, was in another state, using a different name on his resume, trying to start over in a completely different industry. But the internet has a long memory, and reputation, once destroyed, is rarely rebuilt. He had lost everything, and the woman he spent 15 years underestimating had been the air event of his fall. The irony was not lost on anyone, especially not his, on those sleepless nights where he revisited every decision, every cruel comment, every opportunity he had to be different and chose not to be. The best revenge, Marina discovered, was not to destroy Richard. It was building something so good, so fair, so powerful, that people like him simply could no longer exist in that space. And that's exactly what she was doing. 6 months later, Technova Solutions' main conference room was unrecognizable. Where before there were just generic corporate posters, there were now photos of the entire team. Different faces, different bodies, different ages, and everyone is really smiling. Marina was at the front of the room, but not alone. Jennifer, Marcus, David, Sarah, Priya, and Kevin were by her side, each holding a certificate, each being officially promoted to leadership positions. The CEO of the headquarters was present, along with journalists from 3 publications specializing in technology and corporate culture. The story of Technova's transformation had become a case study. Universities asked for permission to teach about the case. Other companies asked for consultancy to implement similar changes. When I took over as regional director 6 months ago, Marina began, a firm voice filling the room, this unit was ranked as the worst in performance in the company. 42% turnover, falling productivity, non-existent morals. Today, we are the #1 unit across all metrics. Turnover fell to 8%, productivity increased 37%, and for the first time in 7 years, employees from this unit recommend the company as a place to work. Applause filled the room. But these numbers don't tell the full story. she continued. The real story is in people. Jennifer Reeves, who almost quit her job, now leads our artificial intelligence division and just had a paper accepted at an international conference. Marcus Webb implemented an automation system that saved $240,000 this year and is being replicated in other units. David Lee created a mentoring program that reduced onboarding time for new employees by 60%. Marina paused, looking at each face in the room. These people have always been exceptional. What changed was not them. It was that finally someone stopped judging them by appearances and started to see competence. And when you do that, when you really see people, extraordinary results happen naturally. A journalist raised her hand. Marina, can we talk about Richard Callahan? What happened to him after his dismissal? Marina chose her words carefully. Richard signed a confidentiality agreement, so I can't go into specific details. But I can say that he no longer works in this industry. And the policies we implement here ensure that managers with similar behaviors don't last more than a few weeks before they are identified and removed. And you? Another journalist asked. 15 years of being underestimated. How did you not give up? Marina smiled. It wasn't a bitter smile, it was genuine. Honestly, there were days when I almost gave up. There were nights I cried alone in the car before going home. There were mornings when I needed 20 minutes of mental conversation to get out of bed and go to work. But I had something that Richard and people like him never had. Purpose. I wasn't just working for myself. I was working for all the people who would be hired after me, for all the Jennifers, Marcus, Davids that would come. And when you have a purpose greater than yourself, giving up is no longer an option. That night, after everyone left, Marina was alone in the office once again, but this time it was different. It wasn't loneliness for survival. It was solitude of reflection. She opened her laptop and checked emails. One caught attention. Sender, Julia Mendez. Julia had been one of Richard's first victims, fired 3 years earlier after he said she was too old for technology. Marina had gotten her contact through HR and offered her a position on the renewed team. Julia had accepted. The email said, Marina, I just left the most incredible team meeting of my career. 23 years working in tech, and this was the first time I felt truly valued. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for proving that age is just a number and competence is what matters. You changed my life. Marina had to stop reading. Teary eyes, but they were good tears this time. Another email, from an unknown address. Subject, thank you for inspiring change. She opened it curious. Hi Marina, my name is David Okonkwo. I'm a manager at another technology company. I read about what you did at Technova. Your story gave me color. I act to report my own boss who had similar behavior. The investigation began yesterday. I wanted you to know that you didn't just change your company. You started a wave that is changing the entire industry. Thanks. Marina closed her eyes. He took a deep breath. He let that sink in. 15 years. 15 years of pain had been worth this. To know it wasn't just about her. It never was. It was about creating a world where the next generation wouldn't have to go through what she went through. 2 months later, Marina was invited to speak at Stanford. Auditorium with 400 people. Students, teachers, professionals. The title of the talk, Invisible Leadership, How 15 Years of Underestimation Transformed Me into the Leader My Company Needed. She took the stage, 400 pairs of eyes fixed on her. Some only sell plus-size bodies, others seeing the woman who had destroyed a network of systematic discrimination in one of the largest technology companies in the country. My name is Marina Patel, she began, and for 15 years I was invisible. She told the story. He spared no details. He talked about every humiliation, every promotion denied, every cruel comment disguised as constructive feedback. Each time his work was stolen. Each time he had to swallow anger to keep a job. And do you know what I learned? She said, reaching the end. I learned that people who underestimate you are, in fact, giving you gifts. They are giving you time to prepare, time to document, time to build a case so solid that when you finally act, there is no defense possible. Richard Callahan underestimated me for 15 years, and in those 15 years, I built an arsenal that destroyed not just him, but the entire network of toxic executives he protected. She paused, looking at the audience. So if you're being underestimated right now, if someone is telling you that you don't have the right image or don't fit the profile, listen carefully. They are betting that you will give up. He's betting that you'll internalize the criticism and disappear. Don't give her the satisfaction. Stay, document, get ready, and when your time comes, and it will come, make sure your victory isn't just personal. Make it systemic. Change the rules of the entire game. Because personal revenge is temporary, but structural change is permanent. Standing ovation. It lasted a full 3 minutes. After the talk, a young woman in her early 20s approached. Plus, size body, red eyes. Marina, I work at a startup. My boss said last week that I would never get a leadership role because clients don't take people seriously. She paused, voice breaking. People like me. Marina held her hands, firm, warm. First thing, document this conversation. Date, time, context, witnesses if any. Second thing, your boss is an idiot. Third thing, you will get a leadership position. Maybe not at this startup, maybe not with this boss, but you will. Because competence always wins over appearance. It may take 15 years like it took me, or it may take 15 months, but it will happen. You just need to be patient, strategic, and inflexible. Did you understand? The young woman nodded, tears flowing, but there was hope in her eyes now. I understood. Thanks. Marina watched her walk away, and she realized something. For the first time in 15 years, she no longer felt invisible. Not because she had an important position, or because her story was in the newspapers, but because finally, she had used all that pain to create something greater. 3 months later, Richard Callahan was in the news again, but not in the way he expected. Former technology executive Richard Callahan was arrested today for resume falsification and fraud in attempting to secure a management position using a false identity and made-up credentials. Callahan, who was fired from Technova Solutions following an internal investigation into systematic discrimination, is being investigated for. Marina read the news. He felt no joy. He didn't feel angry. He felt nothing but sadness for a man who had so much and threw it all away because he couldn't see the value in people who didn't look like him. She closed the laptop. He looked around the renovated office. Team photos on the wall. Best place to work. Certifications. Innovation awards. Framed employee appreciation letters. Jennifer entered, carrying coffee. I saw the news about Richard, she said, handing over the cup. How are you? Well, Marina replied honestly. I wanted to feel satisfaction, but I only feel relief. He can't hurt anyone anymore, and that's all that matters. You saved a lot of people, Marina. Do you understand that? Marina took a sip of coffee. He thought of the young woman at Stanford. He thought about the emails he received daily from people sharing their own stories. He thought of Julia Mendez working happily for the first time in years. Thought about Marcus leading projects. He thought of David mentoring new employees. I didn't save anyone, she said finally. I just showed that a broken system can be fixed, that toxic people can be removed, that justice, even though it took 15 years, is still possible. The rest, people did themselves. That night, Marina did something she hadn't done in years. She had dinner in peace. No computer, no emails, no stress, just her, good food and peace. And when he went to sleep, for the first time in a decade and a half, he didn't have nightmares about humiliation. She didn't wake up anxious. He didn't need to convince himself to get up, because finally the war was over, and she had won, not by destroying enemies, but by building a system where enemies could no longer exist. The best revenge, Marina discovered, was not seeing Richard suffer. It was knowing that no other Richard could do what he did. It was knowing that the next Marina anywhere would have the tools to fight. It would have policies to protect it. There would be a system that would believe her, and that was permanent victory. Final moral. Underestimating someone is not just cruelty, it's strategic stupidity, because while you are judging by appearance, the person you underestimate is documenting, learning, growing, and building a case that will one day destroy you. The most powerful revenge is not destroying those who hurt you, it's building a system where people like them can no longer hurt anyone. 15 years seemed like eternity when Marina started, but looking back, each humiliation had been a lesson. Every tear had been fuel. Every no had been motivation. Richard Callahan spent 15 years thinking he had power, but real power does not come from position or authority. It comes from purpose, patience, and strategy. And when these three things align, when you turn pain into mission, when you use injustice as fuel for structural change, you don't just win, you revolutionize. Marina Patel was no longer the invisible analyst that no one noticed. She was the director who changed the entire industry, and her story, born of 15 years of darkness, now lit the way for thousands of people still struggling in the dark. Because in the end, justice is not about individuals, it's about systems. And Marina hadn't just punished a bad man, she had fixed the entire system. And that was the real victory. If you like this story of overcoming injustice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every week we bring real stories of people who transformed their greatest pains into their greatest victories. Until next time.